been a lot going on. I'm working on a few more videos, and so a lot going on in my personal life. Just for some context, we're looking into a mortgage, getting married next month, and so I've been working with my therapist. I don't know if I've mentioned before, I'm a big proponent of therapy. As a registered minister, most of the conversations that I have with people in any kind of an advice giving or therapy capacity are you seeing anybody, as a therapist? And so I just want to put out there, I'm very big on, I think everybody should go to therapy at least once in their life, and I think that we really need to normalize that. So with that being said, I kind of want to take some time to do a video on mental health, and specifically I want to talk a little bit about Mavlov's needs, mostly because I hate them and the way they're used. So for people who aren't familiar, and I'm probably misquoting some of this, but to paraphrase, Mavlov's hierarchy of needs, there was some scientist named Mavlov who said that basically to thrive as a society or to thrive as a person in society, you had to have your basic needs, food, clothing, shelter, met. And that part I agree with more or less. But a lot of times it's interpreted in a way that I really don't like, depending on the textbook you read, depending on the person using it. It's kind of up there with like toxic positivity and some other bullshit, specifically when it comes to religious groups and coven training and so on and so forth. So it's kind of a catch-22 that on the one hand, as a coven leader, if someone wants legitimate coven training, okay, yes, you have to be able to commit to certain things. If you can't drive out to see me, there's not a lot I can do for you, because if you can't make it to events or drive, you're not really a lot of good to me, and I don't mean to be a dick, that's just the way it is. If you can't commit to showing up when you say you're going to show up, okay, I can't help you there. Everybody has something that happens, your car breaks down, God forbid a family member has an emergency, whatever. Now and again, it's not a big deal, but there is a certain level of stability required. You have to be able to meet the needs of training and so on and so forth. And if you're going to be part of a group, there is a certain requirement for actually participating in that group. And I think that's all fairly fair to say. Now, that having been said, there are a lot of different groups that I think make some fairly outrageous requirements on you. Being that, okay, it's good. Certain things are good to have. Knowing you have transportation. So this kind of changes depending on where you live. I live in a rural area, so transportation simply needs, do you have access to a car that you yourself can drive and take away for, 6, 8, 24 hours. If you're in a city, I've lived in certain places. I lived up in Jacksonville, Florida for a while. If you're in a city like that, if there's a bus system and it can reliably get you where you need to go, I've heard like in Miami, buses actually go 24 hours a day, which is weird for me because I'm not used to that, but again, I'm rural. Then to my mind, if you have a subway or a bus or something that can get you, to me that's transportation. You got a bus pass, great, you're good to go. But some people get into more of a, I expect you to have this, and I expect you to have that, and I expect you to, own your house, and own a car outright, and not have all these bills, and be making more than, X number of dollars, and it usually isn't that extreme, but I've seen some requirements that I think are pretty ridiculous. I don't know if any of you are really into astrology, but there's a thing called the Saturn return. About every 7 years, Saturn returns to where it was in the place it was when you were born. Saturn is kind of like this big destructive force, and it has a way of fucking shit up. And, it sucks, but the big one that most people take into account, and again, paraphrasing, there's a little more to it, but I'm not going to spend an hour going into it. A lot of people don't really consider you seasoned as an adult until you're the major Saturn return when you're 27, 28, I think it is. And the point is that's the one that people generally find really messes your life up. You're old enough to have the concerns and the control over your life in terms of home, car, relationship, yada yada. So I've actually heard people say things, and it's very common, unfortunately, to to hear group leaders go, oh yeah, we won't take somebody until after their, what is that, fourth Saturn return? After they're 27 years old, because I don't want to deal with that hot mess, because they're going to have a lot going on and a lot of change and a lot of drama and yada yada. I've heard a lot of people go, oh yeah, I won't, take anybody seriously until they're, own a house, own a car, and they're married or something similar, and because they like people to be stable. And I'm like, that is such a freaking load of crap. So dialing it back around to Mavlov, getting further into his theories and his ideas, the first half that kind of makes sense is if you don't have food, shelter, and food, clothing, shelter, you can't really function at your optimum level. And I agree. As someone who's dealt with a lot of turmoil in my life, yeah, it's kind of hard to go after quote-unquote higher pursuits when your basic needs aren't even met. And to a point, I understand that. But when we continue to get into Mavlov, my interpretation of it, and a lot of the interpretations I've read, basically make it sound like you're less than human and you're not capable of spirituality or true art or any of these things. And it goes into this idea that as a society, we're not capable of higher being, of creating mass artwork, music, all these things until our needs are met. And I feel like, in a way, to me, that really sounds a lot like things like eugenics, which, if you're not familiar with eugenics, it sucks. Basically, there are people that believe that if you have disabilities, or if your, quote, gene pool isn't great, you shouldn't breed because you're going to bring down the species. And it's screwed up, and these people are sick. I've met them, I've interacted with them, I've had them tell me I shouldn't reproduce. It's disgusting. That being said, some people with Mavlov's needs really, to me, are borderline like the eugenics crowd. They feel like if you're not in a good position, you shouldn't inflict yourself upon society. Well, whether or not that's true, whatever. But my thing is that when you belong to a religion, when you belong to a tradition, for example, say I take a candidate today, she's perfect. We'll call her Jane Doe. Has a car, has a house, has everything, has her life, crack-a-lackin', she's moving along, zip, 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 wonderful. If she turns around tomorrow, God's forbid, fire burns down her house and her whole family dies except for her. She now no longer has a home. She now no longer has a car because it got eaten in the fire. She now no longer has a family. She doesn't have a support group. And her mental state has gone to hell in a handbasket. I am not simply going to get rid of Jane. Oh, I'm sorry. You're dealing with too much. We're going to boot you from the coven. Hell no. And I think we have to understand, to an extent, people going through something need spirituality more than ever. Now, you get into a little gray area in terms of, okay, are we talking about somebody who's just attending my Sabbats? I have in the past done outer court Sabbats where people can just come with no commitment versus, am I looking for an actual productive member of a coven to initiate and be able to work on shit? And so it's going to vary slightly depending on what your commitment level and what the group is. Frankly, I think that as a community, we really need to look into and consider, and this is one of those intermediate topics I'm talking about, the psychology and the mental health of a person as a whole. Because me personally, I'm going to be completely straight. When I got into the coven that I spent most of my training in, I was a hot mess. Now, I was already initiated, so there was a certain amount of commitment level by the tradition to stand by me, as it were. But I'm going to be completely honest, my Gardnerian training saved my life. Now, I'm not saying that makes it for everybody. I'm not even saying that's even necessarily a quote-unquote healthy use or intent for the training. Gardnerian training should not be your everything. In my personal case, it's how it ended up. It gave me something to work towards, but it also gave me a connection to the gods. It gave me a connection to something bigger, and you know what? There's something about coming home to an empty apartment every day, not having enough money to pay your bills. It just makes you want to shoot yourself. And I'm not encouraging that thought process, but it is what it is. So that having been said, and, just kind of getting into the heavy stuff, having a group of people, even if they're just relying on you to bring candles or salt or a cake or a loaf of bread, having something to look forward to, having something to build towards, even minus the religious aspect, is, I think, very important. I think being a community and being there for people is very important. It's an aspect of what I feel I need to consider as clergy. And I think that giving people access to the gods, as it were, giving people access to the mysteries, and I think for me, the line, as far as will I take them, will I not take them, really comes down to their breaking point. Is coming to the events going to enhance them, or is it going to make them snap? I've known different people, and just so you guys all know, if you're not initiated, if you're curious on what goes into the thought process, I can't really talk about what happens in inner court, but I will say, if any of you are familiar, look up the hero's journey. It's a thing, the journey of a human being, the spiritual journey of a human being, different versions. It's a lot of the same different stuff. Going on a spiritual journey, you have to face yourself. And that's any spiritual journey. And when you get into who am I, what am I really, what do I really believe, what do I really do, why do I think I'm here, part of my job as a high priestess when considering students is, are they strong enough to handle that, or do I think they're strong enough to handle that? And consistently reevaluating, so especially people who are going through stuff. I've had people that were in training with me that I eventually had to be like, okay, kid, no. And sometimes it's a 6-month sabbatical, and sometimes it's, okay, no, you're done. I can't be responsible for you destroying yourself. And it sucks, but it's part of the job. And I think if you're in a position where you're offering something, so more specifically the public events that I sometimes offer, and I plan to in the future, I think we need to take into account or responsibility for the fact that as spiritual traditions, as spiritual faiths, is someone's mental health my responsibility? Technically, no, but also acknowledging that I can enhance that. I have the ability, or rather, I have the opportunity to offer an experience that may enhance that. It's not me personally, the person, but being clergy, having access to this community, having access to tools to provide events and things. I think that we really need to consider that sometimes I think we reject people or we kick people out that maybe we shouldn't. And to be fair, it's a very complicated question. It can be very hard to decide. Some of the hardest conversations I've had to have as a high priestess, or, prior when I was running a maiden coven before I fully hived off on my own, am I going to hurt or help this person? And I think that we need to be more willing in a lot of cases to accept people who are not perfect. I think a lot of coven leaders, a lot of groups get in the idea, and it is an important consideration, what does this person bring to the group? But also, what does the group bring to the person? I think, a lot of us would love to have highly skilled, highly talented people that could really get crack-a-lackin' and get crack-a-lackin'. Apparently that's my word today, guys. But that, really want people with some pop and some fizz and some whiz and some bang, that, can really kick some energy and get a really strong ritual going, really get some stuff going on, and that's great. And it is. And when we can find that, we definitely want to encourage that. But I think at the same time, we need to step back and consider the fact, whether we like it or not, we are a religion, we are a spiritual path. And I think we need to also consider it from that angle, because for me, speaking for myself, I won't speak for anybody else, my perspective is simply that. It's my perspective, but it's a perspective that I have. But speaking for me, there have been times in my life when all I had was my relationship with paganism and with deity and with the gods, and specifically being a Gardnerian, knowing that there was always access. Sometimes you're too damn depressed to do a ritual by yourself, to figure out a ritual by yourself, to write a ritual by yourself. And there are books and things that have them pre-written, but who wants to go to the store and buy candles and buy salt and take the time out to set everything up? Sometimes knowing that there's somebody out there who has pre-done all this for you, and all you have to do is haul your butt through a shower and drag your carcass to the place, it can be life-changing. It can be life-saving. And I think that we really need to consider sometimes where that line is. Because, for example, and for what it's worth, in case you guys don't know, pagan clergy, we get some of the most insane emails. I miss Witchbox. I do. If you knew what Witchbox was, bless you. If you don't, I'm so sorry. It was amazing. It was kind of like a phone book, but at the same time you could get emails, but it was through the website, so no one had to have your private information, and it made it easy to block them and so on and so forth. But anyway, we used to get some of the most insane emails from, my boyfriend's a werewolf, how do I tie him up in the basement every full moon? I'm afraid he's going to kill me. To one lady, she was hearing voices, and she's like, everybody keeps telling me I need to take medicine, and they keep locking me in a psych ward, but I know they're real, help me, I need you to tell my psychiatrist that this is real. And I mean, no laughing matter, you can't help but feel bad for people like that. But so there is definitely a line that we won't cross, and I think each one of us, that line's a little bit of a different place. But I just want to submit that mental health is a complicated issue. I think most of the witches I know, if not all of the eldership and leaders that I know, either are or very definitely have been at points in therapy. And I just want to take a time to shout out and say, hey guys, if you're thinking about it, if you think you might even need it, go. Just go. Okay? I think therapy is a beautiful thing. I think self-reflection is a beautiful thing. And you know what? A lot of times it's come down to, for me, simply the fact that I just needed an outside perspective. There have been a lot of times I've just been like, hey, I need a sanity check. This is what I experienced. This is what I felt. I've been through a lot of gaslighting in my life. And sometimes even just having someone to go, no, that person's gaslighting you. They're toxic. Just having someone to bounce things off of can be amazing. And you know what? If you don't have the money to go, I completely understand. I'm not going to advertise anything or anyone right now, but most places, there's a county way you can go check through, any of the social work or any of the, various other things. Most counties, if you need mental health, they will give it to you for free. I would be a little careful when it comes to medications in the county system, because you don't always get the individual care that you should. And I know around here they'll just pop you full of pills, which isn't always great. I'm not against medicine, but you want to make sure it's medicine. They thought about you as an individual. It's something you as an individual need, something you as an individual should even be on. So I encourage you to take an active part in your care if and when, especially, medicine comes into play. But yeah, so just some thoughts of mine, little rant. Let me know what you think. If you have anything to add, any questions, feel free to comment. I haven't been getting a lot of those, and I would love to see them. All right, have a great day, guys. This is Runa.